Hello, my name is Seth Thompson, and I'm a Hampshire College student. And for this past semester, I've been in a course called Amazonia, Ecology, and Society. And for basically the entire semester, I've been doing independent research on Amazonian dark earths. For my final project, I decided I wanted to make a crash course mini-series to educate the public about Amazonian dark earths. And so this series is going to take up 2 videos. It's going to cover the soil chemistry of Amazonian dark earths and their archaeological context. And I might do one short wrapping up video about where can we go from here, what am I personally interested in studying in the future. But yeah, the main point of this is I want to get the knowledge out there. In every video, I'm going to have a link to my bibliography for all the research. And yeah, hope you enjoy. Before I get into what ADEs are, and eventually the soil chemistry, we have to talk about soil formation and how soils form. So the way soils form is that you've got this soil profile, and way down here is bedrock, and way up here is like the surface that you and I are walking on. And soils are built up from the bedrock. So as bedrock breaks down, the soils build up. And this process takes hundreds of years. But we've found that Amazonian dark earths actually form rapidly, like really rapidly. And in some places, some sites, almost in half as much of the time. But the point is that soil isn't a renewable resource in the way that we view like trees or paper and the paper products. You can get the trees and you can renew it in a relatively reasonable amount of time. Well, soils aren't like that, especially like building up nutrients in soils and the process of like keeping healthy soils in the environment. It's a very long process, and while Amazonian dark earths are this strange exception in terms of understanding soil from, it's not that they're exempt from soil formation processes, but understanding why they develop so rapidly is very, its own line of inquiry. But you got to think about this in terms of like hundreds of years, and like in the the adjacent soils anyway, in hundreds of years, and suddenly you're getting this rapid buildup in certain places. So that's the context, and now I can get into exactly what Amazonian dark earths are. So chemically, what are ADEs? ADEs are characterized by higher pH levels, more stable soil organic matter, otherwise abbreviated as SOM. They have higher concentrations of plant-available phosphorus. They have higher concentrations of other key elements like nitrogen, calcium, and zinc, which all of these combine together to make them very, very good for agriculture and sustainable farming. And that's also another reason why we can see how they're linked to human occupation. And again, I'll get into that later. They also have high quantities of vegetative charcoal, which is otherwise known as biochar, which is why also ADEs are usually the focus of a lot of biochar research, which is believed to be able to help us with pioneering sustainable farming for the future and can help us with climate change. And because of the amount of carbon and that specifically the vegetative charcoal in it, Amazonian dark earths are very good for operating as carbon sinks. A lot of research is still being done on that. If we're talking about soil classification, ADEs are considered oxisols, which is using the US soil taxonomy term, and oxisols are usually red, yellow in color, and that's because they have a significant amount of iron oxides in them. But Amazonian dark earths, when you're like out in the field looking at them, terra preta is very dark. It's a very black soil. And so it's really just referring to the type of soil that it's derived from. And oxisols are usually very deep soil, so they're about typically 20 to 30 meters deep. And another two other common terms are used for them. So there's lattisols and ferrosols. So it's oxisol, lattisol, ferrosol that you might hear ADEs referred to as. But again, those are deep soils. They tend to be reddish yellow, and actually Terra Malata is a lot more reddish and yellow, brown, that mucky brown color than Terra Preta. So another important aspect of the soil chemistry of ADEs is cation exchange capacity, or CEC. And as a basic generalization, CEC is higher in Amazonian dark earths. And so what is CEC? What is CEC? It indicates how much of in the soil, how many nutrients are available in a plant available form, and it's the soil's ability to retain those nutrients. And CEC of organic matter is very dependent on pH levels. So ADEs have very high pH, and they also have a really good CEC, cation exchange capacity. And so that combines to is part of the reason why we think that Amazonian dark earths are really good at replenishing themselves and keeping up their nutrient levels, especially in comparison to like other soils within the Amazon, the more acidic soils that are subject to the rainforest nutrient cycle, which is basically other soils in the rainforest are characterized by constant, like not having a lot of nutrients because whatever dead organic matter is falling down from the forest is quickly being taken up again by other animals, and the animals that die are quickly, like it's a constant cycle. There's all the matter is constantly being used. There's no ability for it to really build up, and that's partially what makes doing agriculture in the Amazon so difficult. But because Amazonian dark earths kind of retain those nutrients and have such a high buildup of soil organic matter, we get this kind of soil that reinforces itself because the way CEC works and the way organic matter works, you just get this buildup of pH. I'm going to backtrack a little bit and talk about the acidity of soils. Just as a general idea for you guys, acidic soils are soils that have a pH value of less than 5. And the thing about acidic soils is they're horrible to be doing agriculture on. And that's largely, in the case of the Amazon, the soils are super acidic as a part of the nutrient cycling system of the rainforest. It's partially because a lot of the continental history of South America, it's the oxisols are super acidic usually. And so Amazonian dark earths are this notable exception. And the thing about Amazonian dark earths is that they're kind of viewed as this miracle soil, and this pitfall of archaeologists and soil scientists is that thinking that like the environment was this severely limiting factor in the process of human development. And it's really this big misconception in the case of the Amazon that things like the soils would have limited their ability severely to do agriculture. And while acidic soils certainly make it difficult, the existence of Amazonian dark earths proves that it can be done. Whether or not that was, the soils were intentionally created at first, if they knew, we're probably never going to know. My theory is that it's kind of that mix, but the point is that there's this giant misconception that the environment is severely limited the cultural development of the Amazon and Amazonian dark earths, and especially when you're looking at that chemistry and everything that's found in it, that the biochar and all of that, it really shows that human occupation really helped us. We shaped the environment. The environment, we didn't necessarily overcome the environment, but we did shape it, and we do have traces of shaping that. And so when we're looking at Amazonian dark earths, especially in reference to other soils, we should be keeping that in mind. Another important thing to understand about the soil chemistry of ADs is the role of nitrogen within soils. And so nitrogen promotes plant growth when it's available in plant form. And so nitrogen leaching is a common problem with industrial agriculture. The best comparison I can make is, in the United States, monocroppers and the industrial agriculture, industrial farmers constantly need to be adding fertilizer with nitrogen in it, and they have to calculate that CEC and so many things. It's really a science, but the natural buildup of nitrogen in ADs is just right that it really encourages plant growth, and again, that will also encourage the organic matter buildup, and you have the CEC creating this replenishing cycle. So nitrogen plays a really important role in that replenishment. So the last thing I want to touch on before I go into the archaeological video is the fact that Amazonian dark earths exhibit so much spatial variation, and I'm talking from site to site to even within one site, the chemical composition will change within like any soil area, and that's largely because of human settlement. And that's why I want to talk more about it in the archaeology video. But the brief version of this is that there's so much work that needs to be done in terms of like soil chemistry and the variations within it. And one very, very interesting line of research is the variations in microbial communities within Amazonian dark earths in relation to other soils, but also in relation to each other. And I'll have a link in the description that'll I read a really incredible article about this, but there's that line of research. We can do a lot of research within like floodplain ADEs versus like terra firma, which is the upland ADEs, versus the ones that are like literally right along the river, which I would characterize as being distinct from the floodplains ones just by location. But you got to be thinking that there's so much work to be done here in terms of like their chemical composition and all the different kinds of communities that they host. It can really tell us a lot about how the soils were made, how they're maintained, but that work still remains to be done. So that's it for the soil chemistry of Amazonian dark earths. Obviously, this was a very brief and basic introduction. But again, I have my bibliography in the description if you're looking for future readings that you think you can access. Thank you for watching.